Are you afraid of what other people think of you? Are you worried about, them judging you? Are you concerned that they'll judge you negatively? If so, you're not alone. This is a very common thing for people with social anxiety. Hi, my name is Sebastian van der Schier. I'm a former social anxiety disorder sufferer and a social confidence coach, and I help people feel calm, relaxed, and at ease in social situations so you can connect, have a good time, enjoy yourself, and just be you and share that with others and, enjoy social interactions. Now, I had that little intro to this video or audio if you're listening to the podcast because I did a test. I sent an email out to my email list, to everyone on my list, asking, what is your top number one social fear? And I had all sorts of fears on there. Fear of rejection, fear of being the center of attention, fear of being seen anxious, fear of embarrassing yourself, fear of negative judgment, fear of being made fun of, fear of being laughed at, fear of being criticized, fear of being ridiculed, fear of being ignored, you name it, okay? This is just top of my head. But the number one fear was the fear of negative judgment. So in this video, I'm going to share why people have that fear of negative judgment. And I'm also going to share the solution, the logical, well, what's the outcome? And it's quite simple. And then I'll offer you a resource for making the emotional transformation from going to fearing negative judgment to, feeling free, indifferent or carefree about what other people think, okay? Very cool. All right, so here we go. So I personally had a fear of people's negative judgment for the longest time. Worrying about what other people thought of me, that was the big thing. I was constantly trying to seek their approval in very subtle ways. And you can become really good at it because your brain learns how to be accepted, right? Because it's so important how to not get rejected. So a lot of people with social anxiety, they're quite sensitive and they're quite intuitive, and so they can pick up on social cues. So you learn, what is the right way, and the wrong way to socially interact. And so I was subtly seeking people's approval. What I really worried about was, embarrassing myself and then what they would think of me if I became red in the face, or me appearing nervous or anxious and then them judging me to be a loser or pathetic or not a real man or a wimp or just a boy or, losing my reputation. Excuse me, got a bit of a cold. And then this fear of their negative judgment really caused me to avoid a lot of situations, even just avoid participating in certain topics of conversation, and my avoidance was really clever as well. I would avoid certain conversation, would turn my back on certain conversation, would go to the toilet at very timed, sometimes multiple times per social setting, where I knew that there was a high possibility of me being judged negatively, I would avoid it like the plague. Okay, so I can very much relate to that. And I also knew at some point, after I started doing this inner work, what a problem it was. Like this worry about what other people were thinking all the time. Because I knew I couldn't be myself. I couldn't say what came to mind. I had to go through like this filter. Oh, if I say this, how are they going to respond to that? If I say that, what if he says that? Oh, then I'm screwed. I better keep that to myself. And so the way I came across was very stilted and rigid and, contrived. And I said things as well to try to be cool and like all of that kind of stuff. So I couldn't be authentic because of this fear of, their negative judgment. And it was crippling. And I dealt with that for a long time. And, like I said, it's very common. Now, it sucks. It's not great, but it's there for a reason. Okay? So when you fear negative judgment, it means that you've learned that negative judgment is painful. So you've had experiences in the past where you were judged negatively and it was really painful. Now, in many cases, 40-50% of the cases, that actually comes from the repetitive negative early life experiences, which is usually relationship with your mom or relationship with your dad or relationship with an older sibling, or an uncle, or sometimes a teacher, but it's usually your parents, and you just experienced a lot of negative judgment from them. So that can be in the form of criticism, or being put down, or never doing anything good enough, or having very strict parents, or having parents with super high expectations, and you never being able to live up to them, or abuse, like something. In my case, my dad died when I was 5, and my mom was left with me, and my little sister was 1 at the time. And me and my mom were already fighting prior to him passing, and now that only got worse. And then my stepdad came into the picture, and I hated the guy at the time, and he didn't like me. And so I experienced a lot of rejection, being blamed for the problems. They thought I was purposely forgetting things, and that I was not listening, and that I was trying to, make them fight together. And, to the point where when I was 9, I was going to be put in foster care or at a boarding school. But my uncle intervened, and, I went to live with my uncle for a bunch of years. But I experienced a lot of rejection, a lot of criticism, and a lot of walking on eggshells, because I was doing everything wrong all the time. And so one of the basic needs that a child has is to be loved and accepted as they are. If you are constantly receiving the opposite, you're constantly receiving negative judgment, so to speak. Criticism is kind of like negative judgment. You're not appreciated and accepted and loved for who you are. Then that creates an emotional wound. So it created for me an emotional wound, which then later became, okay, I have to protect myself. That, this is me, logical 34-year-old man talking. I didn't know that back then, but that's how your brain works. If you have something painful that happens over and over and over again, your brain wants to make sure that that situation stops, and it then creates a particular pattern in order to avoid that pain from reoccurring. And so you can develop a fear. Excuse me. You can develop a fear of negative judgment, and like a pattern of trying to get people's approval all the time, and being very attuned to disapproval, and making sure that you avoid that. Now, those patterns can be very helpful in certain situations, but if they become very rigid, then you're constantly trying to seek approval and to avoid disapproval. All right? So that's how the problem came about for me. That's how I see it for a lot of my clients as well. This is a very common one. I'd say pretty much all people that I've been working with in the past 10 years, hundreds of socially anxious clients are dealing with this particular problem. So what's the solution? All right. Well, the ultimate outcome is simply this: to accept whatever people think of you, to give them permission to judge you however they want. To give them like a free pass for never-ending judgment in whatever way, shape, or form they want to judge you. Why? Well, because they're going to do it anyway. whether you like it or not, whether you approve of it or not, whether you give them permission or not, they are judging you. Bad news or good news. Actually, it's indifferent news. It doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. The problem is that it matters to you. And that's an emotional problem that you're dealing with. And you have an emotional reaction to your imagined judging of them of you, if that makes sense. So you project that you project your own self-judgment on them, and then you're afraid of that. So for example, deep down on some level, you believe that you're a loser, or that you're weak, or that you're a dork whenever you experience anxiety or uncomfortable emotions. And so you're afraid that they're thinking that of you too. So you get anxious, and then you're like, oh my God, now they're judging me. Now they must think I'm such a loser. You think you're such a loser. Most people don't even notice it when you're anxious. Yeah. I've been doing lots of live webinars in my social confidence community. And so people come up for a live webinar, and it's me working one-on-one with them, and lots of people are watching them. So other people in the community are watching us, me and my client having the coaching session. And they're super anxious at the start of the session. And at the end of the session, their anxiety's gone, they feel calm and relaxed and that kind of stuff. But many people that are watching it, they can make comments and stuff like that, and write on the forum. And a lot of people have written, wow, it's so interesting to have seen your webinar, Billy, I'm just making up this name for privacy purposes, because you said that you were so anxious, but I couldn't even see it in you, right? So many people can't see that you're anxious, even though you think that you are, even though you think that they can see it. But some can. The fact is, some can. I mean, I'm very attuned to it, so I can see when someone is anxious, pretty much always, because I can sense it. I'm very attuned to it. But that's also because of my own personal experiences with social anxiety and the work that I do. I'm super attuned to it. But, a lot of people can't. And ultimately, what you want to get to is where it doesn't matter, where you're indifferent to other people's judgment, right? That's ultimate freedom, because when you're at that point, then even when you're anxious, it doesn't matter if someone else sees you anxious, because their negative judgment has nothing to do with you. You're like, whatever, it doesn't matter if they think that, okay? That's freedom, because then you can feel the way you want to feel, and then you can feel the way you don't want to feel without it getting worse because you're afraid of other people's judgment. And you're just free to be you. This is really an important key component of resolving your social anxiety, being okay with other people's negative judgment, not worrying about what other people think of you. It's freedom, okay? Freedom to be you, freedom, liberation to do whatever. Okay, now, like I said, this is a very simple description of where you want to be. This is the outcome, right? And that's not as easy as, oh, now I know what to do. Just accept what other people think of me, or just give other people permission to think whatever they think. Oh, great, I'm going to do that. Okay, that's the mindset. That's the mindset that you want to get to. But I've just given you a logical understanding, and that does not mean at all that you are now emotionally congruent with that. If that was the case, I could turn this into a little book and start selling it, and I would make millions and millions of dollars, because, this would be the end all be all. But it's not like that, because your fear of judgment or your social anxiety is an emotional problem. It's not a logical problem. So no amount of logical information is actually going to solve the problem for you. In order to go from social anxiety, or in order to go from fear of negative judgment to being indifferent to what other people think of you, to feeling calm and at ease with whatever people think of you, that requires an emotional transformation. So in my situation, with what I've just shared with you, when my mom was criticizing me, when my mom was blaming me for everything, when my mom and I were fighting all the time and I was guilt tripped, when my stepdad hated on me, and all of that kind of stuff, all of that crap that happened in my early childhood, all that early childhood crap, all of the emotions from there contributed to me judging myself harshly, me rejecting myself, me not accepting myself, and then worrying about other people judging me too. And so it's that emotional baggage that needed to be addressed, that needed to be released. And once I did that using a technique called tapping, EFT, emotional freedom techniques, the first time you hear about it, it's a very silly looking yet extremely powerful emotional release technique where you tap with the tips of your fingers on specific acupressure points in the body. It looks silly. If this is the first time you hear it, you're probably like, yeah, right. But it's amazing. It's changed my lives. It's changed the lives of hundreds of socially anxious clients that I've worked with. There have been over 100 peer-reviewed scientific studies done on the effectiveness of it, and they're published in prestigious journals such as the APA, the American Psychological Association. And what it does is it sends a little, studies have shown that the tapping, I know this sounds weird, sends a little signal to the part of your brain called the amygdala, which regulates your hormones, and it decreases the production of cortisol, your stress hormone, and it increases the production of serotonin, your happy hormone. And these biochemical responses create a sense of calm. So you think about something that is a problem, the emotions connected to the problem start coming up, and then the tapping release the emotions connected to that problem. So in my case, I would think about, and this is a very simplified explanation, I can't go into depth into this small video, because then we'll go really long. But in my situation, simplified, I thought of my childhood garbage, my childhood baggage, all of that stuff that happened over and over, and I used that tapping to release these emotions connected to it. As a result, my self-judgment would shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink, and my self-acceptance would increase. And as a result, it didn't bother me anymore what other people thought of me, okay? So that's something that you can do as well. That's something that I've done with hundreds of socially anxious clients, and that is something that I'm going to do live on a live webinar. I'm going to do a 4-week live webinar series. It's going to start in a few weeks of you seeing this video. It's going to be starting about the 2nd or 3rd week of July. We're in August 2019. But if you see this video at a later point, I'll likely be offering those 4 recorded live webinars to demonstrate to you, how you can make that emotional transformation. Now, on those live webinars, I'll have a volunteer that I already have, and I work with her to release that fear of negative judgment. So I'll be doing tapping with her, and you can call in to that live webinar, and then you can see me work with her and release her fear of negative judgment. So on screen, you'll see her make a transformation. She'll likely be anxious at the start of the call, like I've done this many times in my community. And you'll see her be uncomfortable. We'll get into why she has that fear of negative judgment. And as these emotions will come up for her, we'll be doing the tapping. And I'll be guiding her through it. And it'll be a gentle process. And you'll see a beautiful transformation happen on screen, like live. So that's going to be really cool. Not only will you be able to see someone make a transformation on screen and see, wow, this really works. This is cutting edge stuff. You don't see this anywhere else. Full stop. This is, if you see it somewhere else, let me know, because I want to check it out. But so. You'll see her make a transformation on screen, and you'll also be able to relate to what she says. You'll be able to relate to her issues because your issues are very similar. I've logged about 5,000 coaching hours since October 2009. And so I see the same patterns over and 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 over until it gets, you know, so repetitive that it would be stupid not to see the patterns. And so in the past year, my social confidence community, I've been doing a live webinar each and every week. And one of the things that the people report watching the live webinars, is that it feels so good that they can relate to the person's issues. It gives them a feeling of, wow, I'm not alone in this. I felt like she feels on the live webinar, or I feel like he feels on the live webinar. And so that already gives you a bit of comfort. Doesn't solve the problem, but it's nice to be able to relate to someone. Now, so that's nice. You see her make a transformation on screen, and you know the most amazing thing of this is you can tap along with this live webinar. So you'll be tapping along, and you'll be saying what she's saying, and you'll be following along, and you will make a transformation yourself, sitting in the comfort of your own home, watching this live coaching session, tapping along, and even though your issue has a different root to it, and it's not the same, the core of it is not the same, the end result of it, of how the problem manifests, the fear of judgment and the patterns are very, very similar. And the beauty is that your subconscious mind will link it to wherever it needs to be linked to, and the tapping will give you a benefit as well, will release some of your issue as well. And that's going to be very, very beneficial. I think you're going to love that. So if that's something you're interested in, if that's something you want to check out, go to this link, and that's where you can sign up. You'll find all the details, and that's where you can sign up. So this is Neil. This is Cutting Edge. I've never done this before, or rather, I've never offered this before. So, jump on it while you can. And I hope this has been helpful. And I will connect with you next week. I release videos like this every week. You can subscribe here. And if you have any questions, post them under the video, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Thank you, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. That is bit.ly/social anxiety webinar series.